Hi everybody. Today we are answering the question, what bits are legal for NRHA competition? So we're going to talk just a little bit about that, and if you have questions as we go along, you're welcome to leave them here in the comment box. If you're watching the replay, you can still leave those questions there, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. If you have a topic or a question that you want to suggest for a future live, you can leave that here in the comments, or you can send us an email at hayeskofalph@gmail.com, and we'll add that to our list, try to get that answered for you as quickly as we can as well. So again, today the topic is what bits are legal for NRHA competition, and I think before we get too much into bits, so we are going to show you what makes a legal or an illegal bit for NRHA competition. We're also going to show you a whole bunch of different bits, and we'll play legal or not legal. And then if you have any questions, we'll try to get those answered. But before we get into that, can you just tell everybody what does it mean? Like if somebody maybe has not shown NRHA before, what does it mean what does legal or illegal bit mean? Like what does that even mean?
I guess that goes bigger than NRHA because so many people when they first start showing don't even know there's such a thing as illegal and legal equipment, curb straps and bits. For NRHA we have 8.5 inches of shank going from the inside of the top of the purchase to the pull on the bottom ring. We're allowed 3.5 inches of port. We have to be smooth bars, the part that goes against the bars of their mouth. And they have to be free of anything sharp. I think a lot of people don't realize, and they have to have a flat curb strap on them. And I think when people first start showing, they overlook that there's rules to what can be in their horse's mouth. And they sometimes take a no score or right before their class, a trainer or somebody says, hey, you can't do that. And it's such a foolish rule to break because it's in the rule book. So one thing with our customers, and I'm a firm believer, I've always been taught this, was you know the rule book before you go show. They provide them, read it, and know the stuff, because having a illegal equipment no score is such a, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's such a silly one to take because you can fix that so much easier. So a lot of times people get away with it if they're not showing at a show where bits are checked and equipment is checked. But at NRHA events, if it's an NRHA class, then bridles are checked, and if you are using something that is outside of the parameters of what's allowed, then you don't get a score for your class. So essentially you're disqualified. Right, and that's something we hear all the time. People come in, they've been showing, let's say, a club show. They're not used to bit checks because a club show judge normally isn't going to ask them to drop bridles. And they say, well, I've been using this and nobody said anything. That doesn't mean it's legal. It just means you haven't got caught. Yeah. It's like speeding out in the middle of nowhere. Just because the cop wasn't there doesn't mean it's not legal. So as long as your equipment is legal, you're good. You get a score. If your equipment is illegal, so if you have a bit that the shanks are too long or there's something coming down off of the bottom, we'll get into that a little bit in a second, you get a no score, which is actually worse than a 0 score, right? A score of 0. A no score cannot advance into a go round, and a no score gets rode up into NRHA. So yes, it is technically. So you actually kind of get in trouble for it. Not only is your run no good, but you also get written up. And can anybody find that if somebody's been written up? I don't know if they can or not. We're about to lose a little bit of. We got a tractor. Somebody's about to come behind us, I'm sure. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure they can. It stays on file. Yeah. You don't. The only person it really affects is the show manager has to, or show rep, has to fill out a report at the end of the horse show saying what was the nose score for. And a nose score is different than a zero. Zero is just off pattern or something like that. A nose score is illegal bits, did they spur it too hard, stuff like that. Basically, it's anything that could be borderline, abusive or something like that.
Okay, so there's a couple different things that we have to talk about in terms of what's legal and what's not legal for NRHA competition, because sometimes you're allowed to show in a snaffle if you're in a fraternity class. Sometimes you're allowed to show in a snaffle versus everything else where you're in a shanked bit. So should we first talk about what's legal for snaffles? Because this is not the same as quarter horse. The rules for quarter horse is a bit different.
Snaffle rules are the same AQHA and NRHA.
But not the age. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, the age is different.
Age,
so
AQHA,
in the reiners, we only have, we have certain fraternities, actually they have some 4-year-old derbies too that can be snaffle bitted. But that's all, and they're designated ones. Not all fraternities are snaffle bits, and not all 4-year-old events are snaffle bits. And that's something you always want to make sure you check. Sometimes they have either or classes, which are you can ride snaffle in a two-handed, or you can ride shank bit, but you have to be in one hand. There's all different things. The biggest thing is you know the rules before you go. The biggest thing is legal snaffles have to be smooth on the bars. They can't be twisted. They have to be certain sizes. They can be O-rings. They can be D-rings. But they have to be free. Your rein has to be free. There's no leverage applied when you pull on them, and they have to be smooth. They can be inlaid with copper. I don't know if you can really see it on there. They can be inlaid, but that's smooth. They can be mullined a little bit, so that they bend. That thing kind of wraps around that horse's mouth just a hair. This way. They can be that, or they can be straight. They all have different applications for what you'd want to do with them, whether you want one straight, a little smaller, a little bigger. But the biggest thing is that they're smooth and they're a shank. The snaffle side of it, the shank is round. That one there is an O-ring that slides. This one here is kind of a version of a D-ring. But it cannot have a shank on it, and it has to be broken snaffle.
Or you can show in a hackamore.
And you can show in a hackamore also. We didn't bring hackamore out.
What are the rules for hackamores, real quick?
Hackamores are pretty easy. Sizes, no metal in them. They'll run a magnet across them. And then the same thing, two-handed. Hackamores, you can have, you don't have to have a split rein because your Makati is one big rein. And that's only when you're showing them two-handed. You can, it gets a little confusing because you can show an aged horse in a hackamore, but it has to be one-handed with split reins. But that's very seldom done in the NRHA stuff. But for the hackamore horses, we're allowed two-handed, and they're not split reins because the Makatis are connected. But that's all.
Okay. And then the majority of people that are watching this and that sent in questions are not worried about any of that stuff. They're just worried about what they can go show in.
Right. Your 99% of all your rein-ins are all one-handed, shank bit. You have to show them that way.
So or what makes a legal shanked bit?
Most of the rules on the shank bits are pretty standard bits. You have to have smooth bars. You are allowed correction bits, which is a double break like this one is. This one here is a little 1x1 that we use quite a bit actually. It has the 2 breaks right here. You are allowed a 1 break, like a snaffle mouthpiece, a 1 break, or it can be solid. We have some of those also. The biggest rules are this has to be smooth. That's a big one for a lot of people. Nothing can protrude down. You cannot have little balls here or little prongs or anything, or a donut where it's a round piece right here. You can't have anything coming onto their tongue, basically. You are allowed 8.5 inches from where the pull is, which is, if this little price tag was a rein, when I pull back, right there is where it's at. It is not down to here, it's where the pull is. To the inside of this purchase ring right here can be 8.5 inches from there, and we're allowed 3.5 inches from the bottom of this bar to the top of the port, and those are the main rings. Most people don't get called on an illegal bit. The bit itself, 99% of all no scores for illegal bits are usually when they attach the curb chain, because that has to lay flat. We have one, we'll show it in a bit here. But the biggest things with the rules are 8.5 inches of shank. Most people are never going to ride with that more than 8 inches. You'll just get in trouble. So here's one. It lays flat. A lot of people will get in trouble because they clean their headstall, or like we take this off, we'll show it some, and they clean this, and they want to clean all this up, so they take it all off, and then when they put it on, they twist this chain when it goes on. And that's the biggest thing. You want this to make sure that chain is flat. Another one that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people get caught on, if you're going to wear a bit hobble, it needs to be in front of your rein. And it seems like kind of a silly rule, but there is a purpose to it. And this has to be in front of the rein. And the same thing, so many people will clean their tack and then just throw it on, and this gets behind there. And that's another one that's a 0. And the NRHA, a lot of times before you go in a pen, there are definitely people you can ask. You can ask the judge if it's at a break and you approach it properly. You can also ask the trainers. You know, we're all sitting around there. Even if it's not a customer of ours, if somebody ever walks over and asks me the legality of a bid or something, I will always answer them. You know, nobody wants to see anybody get a 0 for that. So there's always people that will help. And the other thing too is if you're really unsure, just ask the show manager or the show rep, and they'll ask the judge directly. And that's a really important thing, because you know for sure it's right. You know, not every trainer sitting at the in gate knows the rules. We should. It drives me nuts when we see a trainer that doesn't know the rules. That's just horrible. This is the
And to be fair, like, some people will get used to one set of rules and then try to apply that to every association. There are different rules from association to association. So just because somebody shows even at a high level in one association doesn't mean that they are brushed up on that year's rules for that association. So,
well, that's a nicer way to talk about people. Yes.
Well, I don't.
No,
think,
I agree with you.
I mean, I don't think people do it on purpose. I don't think people.
Most of them know. There are some that just don't know the rules because they're too lazy.
There are some people that don't know the rules. There's some people I forget. I can't keep stuff like that.
I can't
keep
remember
a lot of that stuff.
And we're big on have a rule book in your arena bag.
Yeah, just have a rule book there. Check the rule book. Make sure it's that year's rule book for that association. Check the rule book. If you're not sure, check with somebody who.
If I'm a little unsure too, the one thing I'll tell everybody is, A, let's go read the rule book. I've read the rule book with many people at horse show. Mm-hmm. Or I don't, and this is something that's very important, don't go with I think so. Mm-hmm. Go with let's go ask the judge and the rep. Let's bring it to them and make sure we're clear on it. No judge ever wants to give you a 0. Mm-hmm. I know we all say judges are mean and they're cruel and they're horrible people that way. They're not. They do not want to give anybody a 0.
Just wrong.
Yeah. They love a day where they don't, because they have to do the write-up too. A, they've shown, so they don't want to have a 0 themselves.
No, they're wanting to give you a no score.
Sure. They want to score you high. They want everybody to do well.
Yeah.
So the big thing with it is just ask them ahead of time. I've never, ever had a judge, and I've asked lots of questions to judges, you know, there's a time and a place to do it. You can't walk up to him while he's judging in the
While
chair.
they're judging, yeah.
But, you know, just know the rule book.
Well, and most of the time at an NRHA event, there's a bit judge and then the judge that's actually in the pen showing. You can ask that bit judge.
Now there's really getting to be that luxury of a bit judge.
Yeah, when the bit judge is sitting there, they're happy to answer questions, or they'll pull their rule book right out of their pocket and have a look at it with you.
And show you. That's one thing. The judges are exhibitors. So they're just happy to explain it. You know, they're ambassadors of the sport. They're happy to explain it. You know, that's for sure. One thing I think with the like when it comes to what is legal, what is not, you know, we see a lot with curb chains. That's a very big one.
Yeah. Or even curb chains that have like a kink in them, like some of those
cheap ones, and they get a kink
really
in them,
cheap one. They get a kink in them, so then it's not flat, and then you can get a no score over that, and you can hurt your horse with it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's for sure. It happens so, and everybody feels bad about it because the judges know it's a mistake. You know, it's just it wasn't intentional. When they see something that is intentional, people trying to be sneaky and get away with them, well, then they just shake their head and they don't care. They'll give you a 0 and they just walk away going, what an idiot.
No score.
But when it is, or no score, sorry. Mm-hmm. But when it is a legitimate, just an accident, boy, the judges hate to do it. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, oh my gosh, I'm so, you know, they apologize. You know, I don't know how many times I've heard that. I am so sorry, I have to do this.
Yeah, do you know this? Yeah.
And one thing we do to, especially with our customers, because it happens, our arena bag always has 3 or 4 extra curb chains attached to it. Some are leather, some are chains, you know, different types of chains. They're all legal. So that if anybody ever gets into trouble right at the gate, we're prepared. Mm-hmm. That comes from, you know, enough years of hauling enough people around where there will be somebody have a twisted curb chain, and you just can't get it unkinked, like those ones that are kinked. You can't get it unkinked in time. Or somebody went and bought one, and you know, we don't even see it.
Or somebody forgets to put it on
Well,
altogether.
Well,
that's happened. Yeah, you know, you're setting up your new show head stall or whatever, and your new reins, or you know, your new bed or whatever it is, and just forget altogether to put a curb chain on.
Other ones, I don't know how many times we've seen it, is instead of people hanging the curb chain from the purchase ring, they hang it from down here, not realizing they did it as they put it back on, but they put it down here where there's no leverage attached to it, and it just doesn't work. So anytime you take it apart, especially at a horse show, I never mind if like one of our customers comes up and says, is it right? Can you look at this for me? You know, I put the new head stall on, I changed all this. Can you look at it? That's so important. You know, make sure it's right.
Okay, let's play legal or not legal. So I'm going to hold up a bit, and you, while you're watching, can guess whether you think it's legal or not legal. And then we will talk about if it's legal and why or why not. So let's start with this one. Do we think this one is legal or not legal? Or is there anything that jumps out that looks like it might be a nice bit, but not legal for competition?
Like I said, that's something to be said too, is, you know, some of the bits that are not legal are decent training bits.
Yeah, it's not that they're inhumane. It's just against the rules.
And the problem was when they made, or not the problem, when they made the rules, they have to be so broad, you know, they can't say, well, a twist at this amount is legal, but this is not. Like in the English world, they can have twisted wires. And
even in AQHA English classes, you can have a textured mouthpiece.
Right, you can have twists and whatever, but you
not
can't
in Western. Yeah.
But the problem was they made rules to cover everything, so it's like, instead of saying, well, is this enough, you just say no twists at all, no.
Keep it simple.
Keep it really. So this one's fully legal.
So this one's fully legal.
It is a shank bit, under 8.5 inches a shank, under 3.5 inches smooth,
Copper
nothing on the
inlay.
bars. Copper inlaid is smooth. that's one that we ride. We actually ride a lot in those kind
Yeah.
of bits, the little 1x1 corrections.
Okay. How about this one?
So this one here has a little different style of shanks. These shanks here are designed to kind of keep a horse's shoulder up just a little more. They'll bridle them up just a little more upright. Perfectly legal. So a lot of tongue relief. That horse's tongue sits right in between here. It's flat where the bars sit on the horse's jawbone, right there. Tons of tongue relief. A lot of horses really like this bit. Has a little roller. They'll play with their tongue on those things. This bit is legal cow horse also, but a lot of reiners really like it. And then the shanks are a little different, and that's the thing. You can have different designs on your shanks. You can have different styles. It only matters what happens. These price tags are actually really handy for this. What happens from where you pull your rein to here. Everything in between can pretty much, you know, if they want to twirl them and do whatever they want in the steel, that's fine. As long as they're not
as measuring the shank, so they're measuring from the bottom of here to where it pulls.
Right where my finger is, so the inside of the top.
So if you weren't sure, if you had a bit that you were trying to see if it was legal or not, that's where you would measure it, and then from here to here.
Now, obviously, this is we call them big boy bridles. They got to be broke. They got to understand their job, and they have to.
You wouldn't transition from a snaffle to this one.
No, this is an older horse bit that knows his job, so we just hardly have to move our hands. And they are very good for the horses that are broke for them, are trained for them, and are good-minded horses. The ones that are good in it really like those bits. Big tongue relief. They can play with their tongue a lot. You know, they can move that tongue, keeps their jaws real soft.
And then you could make this an illegal setup with your curb chain.
Well,
right, but the bit itself is legal.
Right. Curb chain, you have to put it on correctly. And so here's another.
Did you know I was going to pull this one out? Did
No,
I surprise you with
didn't
this?
even
No?
think that. I want to watch that bee, though. So these ones here, really popular bits, especially in the kind of the cow horse world. Barrel racers use them a lot. It is not a legal NRHA bit or NRCHA bit, but is a lovely bit to ride at home in and to keep horses fresh in. So we are under 3.5 inches of port with a little roller here, but we have two things that make this illegal. One, this brake comes below the bars, or these protrude below the bars, so that's going to sit on their tongue just a little bit. So that makes it illegal there. And our shanks are gag, they call them gag bits. This slides up and down. So they have to be where they can't slide up and down, so the pull is the same all the time. The gag bits have a wonderful place, especially if somebody's learning how to ride, maybe bangs on their horse's face just a little bit, or you're putting the horse into a little bit of speed, maybe in a stop or a turn, or on a cow, and your hands aren't going to be perfect all the time when you take them. This kind of buffers it a little bit, so you won't end up with that big bang on them. And then you just get a real nice pull on them because they don't get that first kind of bang into their face. So it's a nice bit to ride in at home, lovely bit to work with the cows in, pull one around. Not in the show.
Not legal for NRHA.
You riding that one, you're donating your entry fees. Thank you for coming. You get your picture on the way out.
Okay, I always like pulling ones like this out because everybody's like, oh my gosh, what would you ever use that for?
So this one here is actually a pretty neat little bit. Obviously we're getting high up into here, but this has a little bit of swept back to it at the very top. So that keeps it from having a real pokey feel at the top of their mouth. They'll sit against that, and then the leverage comes from the bars of the mouth and the curb strap. Again, not a baby bit.
Or not legal.
Is legal, perfectly legal, AQHA or NRHA. Not legal NRCHA because this one does not have a roller or cricket in the middle of here. Put that in there and it's legal cow horse, and that would be fine. Shanks don't move. Smooth bars. Does have the inlaid. Again, this one they call these the cavalry shanks. They're designed after the old cavalry bits from the army. And again, these shanks that kind of come back like that, they'll lift a horse's chin up just a hair, keep him from getting real flat and out there. And they also buffer just a little bit if maybe somebody's a little inexperienced with their hands and banging them horses a little bit. They'll take just a little, it's not so much of a bang down with that feeling. It lifts them up and they stay a little softer if somebody's going to touch around on them.
Legal.
This one will be hard to see, I think, over the
legal.
internet.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Legal or not legal. So we have not a ton of distance from here to there. No port, single brake, but we have a lot of texture on that mouthpiece.
So they call these ones a corkscrew. These are kind of similar to the twisted wires and stuff. This is not a legal bit. Is a wonderful bit if you got a horse
of that.
Because of the texture. Everything else would be legal on it. Has a very short shank. You know, you're nowhere near 8.5 inches, that's for sure. You're allowed a single brake if you want. I gotta put this out. I'm not a big fan of a single brake in a shank bit. I don't like where it sits in the horse's mouth. But on these bits, the ridging right here, it's similar to like a twisted wire. And them horses, if you got one that's kind of leaning up on you, you know, maybe he's going into that step and kind of taking that chin up a little bit, and you want to roll that back off, you need a little bit of texture there to get them off that bridle. In the right hands with the right horse, I think that needs to be said. This isn't for everybody. These are really, really nice bits. And you ride in them for about 3 days. And they're not an everyday bit. But for 3 days, you just sit there and you just pull that face up, get them in off that bridle. So you can't show in it, but you could sure ride in it for the 3 days leading up to the horse show.
Okay. Legal or not legal? Mouthpiece is smooth,
Almost like you're trying to sell something.
loose.
I feel like this is more like the auction site.
Well, they do have price tags. Everything is for sale.
No, but when you get on the bit websites where they're selling stuff,
Oh yeah,
that's how
where
they think.
selling
They're like,
them,
this is
holding
what it
them up.
is.
Yeah, here's what it is.
And the auction begins.
Yeah.
So this here is one of the versions of a snaffle that is legal to show in. We meet the requirements of thickness of mouthpiece, single brake. This one's a no ring. Perfectly legal in the right classes, the snaffle bit classes, the fraternity horses that do allow two-handed in a snaffle bit. Most people, that's going to be like a colt riding bit. You know, they're going to ride them babies in it quite a bit. Before that horse is ready for the idea of leverage in their chin, they're going to stick into a snaffle. And that's kind of like one of the standards, that or a D-ring. Smooth snaffle is kind of the standard of everything.
I feel like there's a bit of pushback on these where, people, some people, especially coming from like the natural horsemanship world or maybe even from like club show or from English competition, where people feel like they shouldn't have to ride in a shanked bit. They should be able to ride in a snaffle if they want to. And you can't. you can only do it in the certain classes.
And from the training mentality,
a different set of rules.
You're not getting a soft horse because you're teaching them, like if you want to go fast and hard and have them row soft, you're teaching them they can lean on your hands a little bit. Like, it's harder to ride in those things because they can lean, the push is there. You put a little leverage in there, you don't have to use it until they go to push on you, and then you come back. The neat thing with a lot of people when they bark about having to use those is they're not educated and they haven't done it enough. Like I hear lots of people, I'd never ride in one of those. That's
I'd
fine.
never ride in those, or I should be able to show in my bitless bridle.
Come
Like
play the game.
I think people sometimes think that, I don't know, what they're doing is harder. It's easier on the horse and it's a higher level of difficulty, so they should be able to do it, but that's not the case. Anyway, that's separate. That's maybe a separate.
Yeah, don't get off on tangents.
I'm on a tangent. Yeah, I gotta stay on track. Okay, last one.
Hold on, I'm still biting my tongue from
Okay.
the natural horsemanship tangent that I'm not allowed to go on. Okay, keep going.
This is about legal NRHA bits. Okay, this one. Legal or not legal for NRHA?
So this one here has the D-rings on the sides, which are legal D-rings, but the mouthpiece is not legal. And as I say that, this is one of my favorite bits to ride in, especially on, like, when we do 2-year-olds and stuff. And it is a twist. It has the wire wrapped in the twist, and it's copper wire. They salivate a ton with it. There is some ribbing here from that twist. And the big thing of it is, if that horse wants to participate and be really soft, I don't need to pull on it. I don't need to use it. And then if that horse wants to chin out on me and kind of push on me,
It's pretty cool, actually, how that.
then I can bring them in. And I have a little bit of texture there when I run that across their bars, and they listen to it and they back off of it easier. I'm going to say 2-year-olds. I mean, easy 75% of the time I ride them in this, and switch them back into a smooth snaffle every once in a while. But I'll stay in one of those so often because the ribs aren't, it's not small. It's not going to be pinchy on them. Like, it's not going to bite into there a little bit. The ridges aren't super big and open, so there's not a big bang on them. But you can ride it all day long and it won't rub on raw. When you're riding on them and they're good, you just let them be. And then if they want to push on you, then you can rub one and you can get into their face a little bit and say, that isn't where I want you, so that when they are good, you let them go. One of my favorite bits, but it's not legal NRHA.
Yeah, so what I was trying to get at with like the conversation before about people thinking that they should be allowed to ride in them is, it's not just about what is humane or inhumane. It's a generalized set of rules. Like, there's no reason why this would be considered inhumane. Like, that's a big twist. Yeah, it has a little bit of texture here, which is legal in AQHA in the English classes, but it's not for NRHA. Even if you're allowed to use a snaffle and you're allowed to ride two-handed, you're not allowed to use that. It's not necessarily, they do their best to try to make it in the best interest of the horses, but there are some kind of blanket rules that eliminate bits that are, quite nice to use, but just happen to be illegal.
Well, and the reason they do it is you say, okay, well, that one there, well, if I get a little smaller or get a little bigger ruts in it, all the different things to it.
Yeah.
So they just say nobody uses any at all and no big deal.
Yeah, which is what you got to do when you're trying to judge a whole bunch of people who are all trying to push the rules.
The other difference
the rules
too,
around.
like when people say about the snaffles to the shank bits and whatever, an English horse, you're on their face, you're pulling on them. A Western horse, we don't get on their face and pull on them. We want them to be off of that shank. It's just a different way of riding. Mm-hmm. Ain't no way better than the other. It just looks different. I think that's always so much from the different disciplines. When everybody goes to a different discipline, things will look different. Mm-hmm. The one that always amazes me is the basic structure of all the bits is the same, has been since medieval times. They look different, they're built different, but the basic structure, how that works in the horse's mouth, has not changed. Horse's mouth are still a tongue in between two bars. It is what it is. And all the disciplines use a different version of anything. I mean, gag bits have been in the jumping horse world for years. Ports have been in the Pasafinos and the saddle horses for, they're all the same. We just, how they're built looks differently. And everybody's really quick to point out it looks weird and, it's not what they would ride in because it looks different. But
Okay, so hopefully that answers all of your questions about what makes a legal bit for NRHA competition. If you have further questions, you can leave them for us in the comments. And if you're interested in any of the bits that were shown, or if you're looking for something specific, we do have all of those ones that I just showed you available on our website, as well as a bunch more. Our website is hayescofellperformancehorses.ca, or you can just go directly to the TAC page by going to reigningtaccanada.com.
Biggest thing about taking away from today, read your rule book.
Read your rule book. Always read your rule book. Yeah, and if you have to take your bridle apart, if your bridle is legal and you have to take it apart to clean it, or add a new head stall or add a new curb chain or whatever, make sure that you're putting it back on in a way that's legal.
You know what AQHA should really do?
What?
Instead of reading the rule book, they should have it where it's like on audio, and you can just listen to it while you're changing your head stall and cleaning your tack.
That's a good idea.
I'm a genius. I know.
Yeah. They could just listen to this. Watch the video.
Or I could read it. I'll put my voice.
You could read
Everybody
it.
would want my voice on.
AQHA rulebook read by Jess Copel. Oh my gosh.
I'd be falling asleep by the time we got to the third page.
I can just imagine the tangents that you go on while you're reading about them. Okay, thanks for being here with us, you guys. Hopefully that answered your questions, and we look forward to seeing what else you come up with for questions for bits in the comments.
Are we doing one next week?
Are you going to do one by yourself? I'm not going to be here.
I don't know how to turn that on. So Lindsay,
We'll see you later.
will be on her way to the World Show. Good luck to her.
I will, yeah. Thank
She
you.
will be, I guess Thursday, what would be, Missouri? I'll be on your way.
I'll be in Missouri, yep.
There you go. So I'll be,
Maybe even in Oklahoma. Probably in Oklahoma by this time.
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So it'll be me and the girls taking care of the farm. Wish us well.
Bye, you guys. Thanks for being here
Have a
with
good
us.
day.